Hey guys, welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about some ways that you can collect these old slip joint knives. And first off, if you like the video, go ahead and like it. And if you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I appreciate you guys for doing that. So this knife here was the first knife, slip joint knife that I acquired. And if you look at it, it's got a really cool green and yellow gold thing going on there. And if you look on the back, there's all these little lines milled into the cover of the knife. And it has really cool stampings on it on both ends. Really unusual knife, and it's a high quality knife, so you can hear the walk and talk on it, but it's a very well made little knife. And the interesting story on this knife is I wondered about this green, and I found out in the middle 1800s green was a really popular color. And they put green gold on their pocket watches and on their knives, and bone they dyed green. So this is green bone, and that's kind of interesting. But that sent me down the slip joint rabbit hole, and before long I was getting knives like these. They're colorful, they're different. Never seen a knife like that before. And this knife here, you've got a solid green and black and white kind of motif going on. Kind of cool. That's a well-made knife by Imperial. This knife here is butter and molasses. Collectors call that. It's coloring on clear celluloid. And the interesting thing about this is advertisers sold this pattern as imitation horn. And I've never really seen horn that looked like that. But you're just buying knives when you start out that you see and you like. I not only like this knife because of this Scottish plaid thing going on, but I also really like the pattern. And this knife is called a Texas toothpick or a powder horn because the end kind of looks like the old powder horns in Civil War era. But this knife has a really long, slim, sexy looking blade, and on the frame of the knife it's a kind of serpentine clasp design. Fits really well in your hand. These things would make excellent filleting knives, and are excellent in the tackle box. And this one is actually marked on the shield here, fish knife. So, you're just buying things that you like and appeal to you. But after a few months, you kind of settle down and you start to focus and you start moving towards quality. And this knife here is a serpentine two-bladed jack. It's almost 4 inches. It's a pretty big knife, but it's made by Remington, and Remington made some really high quality knives. And so as a collector, you're really starting to settle down and become focused on what appeals to you. And I call that a philosophy of collecting. And so one of the biggest philosophies of collecting is brand collecting. And if you look at this knife, on the tang there, makers make their mark. And this is a Robertson sure edge knife. And Robertson made, from the period of 1920 through 1940, they made some of the best knives in the world. And so I collect as a brand Robisons. And a lot of guys start doing that. They'll collect cases or shreds, whatever. They pick a brand they like and they stick with it. I also collect shred knives, and I have smaller collections of knives like George Westinghouse and various other companies. But that's what brand collecting is all about. An alternative way to collect knives is a by the cover material. So these are not handles; we call them covers or scales. And so some guys collect bone scales, for instance. And if you look at this knife, you see how beautiful that bone is. That sculpting is called jigging. There's all kinds of different patterns of jigging. Some are very aggressive, some more supple. But if you look on the sides, you can see where the die has not completely penetrated. We call that marbling, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And if you look at this knife, you see the difference between the two bones. And so bones can be different color, different jigging patterns. And the cool thing about bone is over time, that bone will fade in color and produce all kinds of different pretty shades of bone. And so it's not limited to bone. Some collectors are shell collectors, and so they're collecting knives like this, which is mother of pearl. And it is a shell, but it's also iridescent, and so it'll reflect light and give you different colors of light. I'm not really picking up any here, but let's see if we can get it in there. But they'll reflect greens and pinks and blues and reds. And some guys only collect mother of pearl knives, but there's a lot of different types of scale materials. This is horn right here, cow horn. And so that's another way of collecting knives. Another way is by pattern. And so the design of this knife, the shape of it, is called a pattern. And this knife is a 3-bladed serpentine Stockman. So it's got a serpentine design and 3 blades. And some guys only collect Stockmans, that type of pattern. There's a lot of variations on this knife. Different manufacturers tend to manufacture them slightly different than the other guy. And so this knife is a swell end regular jack. This knife right here is a center swell whittler, and whittlers have a main blade and then 2 equal size smaller blades, and they're very, very popular with collectors. They were some of the most finely made knives. This one's from Walden. This is a Coke bottle pattern. Some guys call it a beaver tail because of this wide tail on it. But this is a really popular knife design. A lot of guys collect these. They were prominent from 1900, well, really from 1860 to 1920. And those are pattern collectors. But collecting a specific pattern is not the only way to do that either. So I'm a pattern collector, but I chose to try to collect one of each kind of pattern that was prominent in America. And so that's between 100 and 130, all depending on how you define a pattern. But I'm about 98% there. And Another way to collect is by period. And so you might only collect knives from the 1800s. And you might collect knives from a narrower period, say 1900 to 1945. And you can go even narrower. This knife here was made during World War II. You can see the United States Navy on it. And it's a utility pattern. But they made these knives and issued them to the military from 1941 to 1945. After that, they continued to issue utility patterns. They're a little different than this, but that's a pretty narrow time frame. And maybe you only collect knives from the Civil War or Vietnam War or Korean War, or maybe you just like knives made during the 1920s, so that's all you collect. That's a collecting philosophy. Some guys, if you look right here, this is an inscription plate. It was originally designed so that you could put your initials there or a greeting. Collectively, collectors call these shields. So no matter how they're shaped, we just call them shields. This is a double bomb shield. This is a GIMP shield. This is a federal shield. A lot of different variations on this federal shield. This one over here is a rose medallion. And so some guys just collect for the shields, and it makes for an interesting collection. A variation on that is guys who collect by trademark. And so most American knives are marked with their maker, but some have trademarks on them. And if you look, let me get in here. If you look at this knife, you see it has a real knife. That bird is a pampa, and pampa is written underneath. And pampa is a ostrich type bird that was prevalent in Africa. If you look at this knife right there, that's a lantern that's lit, and it's called, their trademark was that lit lantern and radiant. And you can find trademarks on the blade, on the tangs, sometimes even on the knife itself. And they're really interesting. There's a lot of wild trademarks. This one was John Baker, and it's a phoenix, and underneath you see he spelled phoenix out. And just really cool. These are really interesting. But if you collect by trademark, then foreign knives are probably a better option for you, because English knives, the English were crazy about trademarks. There's a lot of really cool different trademarks. And the Germans the same way. They had a lot of interesting trademarks. And you can find some that are different in America, but we weren't quite as big on that trademark thing. So again, a lot of different ways to collect these knives. Large knives like this are jackknives. They tend to be between 2 and 7/8 up to 6 inches. Smaller knives like these are pen knives, and they tended to be up to 3 1/4 inches, but they're very slim, and they don't qualify to be a jackknife because they're light, they're slim, and they're easy to put in your pocket. So they're called pen knives. And so some guys just collect pen knives, some guys just collect jackknives. These knives here with 3 or more blades are called utility or multi-blades. And so multi-blade knives are another big collecting area for guys. So, some guys aren't getting into all the different nuances of the knife. They're just looking at the overall category of the knife and collecting by category: pen knife, jackknife, or multi-blade. And so I hope this video was informative to you guys. Got a really cool knife over here by Gil Hibdon. That's a copy of the Musa Bowie. There were 5 original Musa Bowies known to exist, and guys actually carried that big huge knife. And I like my little rams there. So if you like the video, go ahead and like it. If you're interested in more content, go ahead and subscribe. And remember, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.